Welcome to Dream Tales Sleep Stories. Tonight's reading is Footprints to the Oasis. Settle into your bed or sofa and let your shoulders, jaw, and eyelids grow heavy. Inhale slowly, 1, 2, 3, and sigh the air away, allowing the day to fade into quiet dark. With every soft inhale, you invite fresh English phrases. With every gentle exhale, stray thoughts drift farther off. Behind my voice flows a gentle melody, renowned for guiding the mind toward deep relaxation. Keep your eyes closed or follow the captions, whichever feels right. Simply receive the rhythm and resonance of the language. Deep in rest, tonight's phrases will take root like seeds, ready to bloom into stronger English skills with the morning light. When you feel settled, hold that unhurried breath and allow yourself to drift into the tale. Footprints to the Oasis begins now. And when the story's final line is faded, the music will linger a little longer, carrying you gently deeper into sleep. Footprints to the Oasis. Kwame was the oldest elephant in his herd, and also the wisest. His gray skin was marked with many scars from his long life in the African savanna, and his tusks were worn from decades of digging and protecting his family. The other elephants respected him deeply, and when difficult decisions needed to be made, they always looked to Kwame for guidance. For 3 months now, the great drought had gripped the land. The sun blazed mercilessly in the cloudless sky, day after day, turning the once green grasslands into a brown wasteland. The rivers that had flowed for generations were now nothing but cracked earth and scattered rocks. The watering holes, where the herd had gathered for years, were completely dry. Every morning, Kwame led his family to search for water, but they found only empty pools and dying vegetation. The younger elephants were becoming weak, and the babies cried constantly from thirst. Kwame's own daughter, Django, had 2 small calves who needed water desperately. As Kwame stood watching his suffering family, memories of his youth came flooding back. 60 years ago, when he had been young and foolish, there had been another terrible drought. Back then, he had ignored his grandfather's wisdom and led a group of young elephants on a dangerous quest for water. They had become lost in the desert for days, and one of his closest friends had died from exhaustion before they were rescued by the older elephants. That experience had taught him the importance of listening to the ancient wisdom, but it had also shown him that sometimes bold action was necessary for survival. Now, as the eldest, he faced the same terrible choice his grandfather had faced all those years ago. "Grandfather Kwame," said Django, one evening as they rested under a baobab tree, "what will happen to us if the rains don't come soon?" Kwame looked at his granddaughter with tired but determined eyes. He had lived through droughts before, but this one was the worst he had ever experienced. However, deep in his memory, he remembered stories that his own grandfather had told him many years ago. "Long ago," Kwame began, his deep voice carrying across the silent savannah, When my grandfather was young, there was a drought even worse than this one. The elephants thought they would all die, but my grandfather's grandfather knew of a secret place where water still flowed, even in the driest times. The younger elephants gathered around Kwame, their ears flapping with interest. They had heard fragments of this story before, but never the complete version. "Where is this place, grandfather?" asked Temba, a young bull elephant who was known for his curiosity. "The ancient ones called it the Spring of Life," Kwame continued. "It lies far to the north, beyond the red rocks and through the Valley of Thorns. But the path is dangerous, and many who have searched for it have never returned." Django's eyes widened with worry. "You're not thinking of going there, are you, father?" Kwame was quiet for a long moment, listening to the sound of the wind through the dry grass. The memory of his grandfather's exact words came back to him clearly now. The old elephant had been lying on his deathbed, and with his final breaths, he had whispered the secret to Kwame. "Listen carefully, young one," his grandfather had said, his voice barely audible. "The path to the spring of life is marked by our ancestors. They carved their footprints into stone so that future generations could find salvation when the great thirst came. Follow the footprints north, past the red rocks where the earth bleeds iron, through the valley where thorns grow as tall as trees, beyond the singing sands where mirages dance. Only there will you find the water that never fails." Finally, Kwame spoke. "I have been thinking about it for days. We cannot survive much longer without water. The babies are growing weaker, and soon we will all be too weak to travel at all." That night, Kwame could not sleep. He walked away from the herd and stood alone under the stars, thinking about his grandfather's stories. According to the old tales, the journey to the spring of life would take many days, and the path was marked only by ancient elephant footprints carved into stones along the way. His grandfather had told him that these footprints were made by the very first elephants, the wise ancestors who had discovered the spring during the great drought of long ago. They had marked the path so that future generations could find their way when the land became too dry to support life. When the sun rose the next morning, Kwame had made his decision. He called the herd together and shared his plan. "I will take some of the stronger elephants with me to search for the spring of life," he announced. "The others will stay here and continue looking for water nearby. If we find the spring, we will return to guide everyone there." Many of the elephants were frightened by this plan. The journey sounded dangerous, and they didn't want to be separated from their wise leader. But they also understood that without water, they would all die anyway. Django stepped forward. "I want to come with you, father." "No," Kwame said firmly. "You must stay here with your calves. They are too young for such a difficult journey." "Then take me," said Temba. "I am young and strong, and I learn quickly." Kwame looked at the eager young bull and nodded. "Yes, Temba, you will come. And you too, Kessie," he said, turning to a middle-aged female elephant who was known for her courage. "What about me?" asked Bomani, another young male who was Temba's best friend. "The journey will be hard," Kwame warned. "We may walk for many days without finding food or water. We may face dangerous animals or get lost in unknown territory. Are you sure you want to come? Bomani stood up straight and proud. I am sure, Grandfather Kwame. My family needs water, and I want to help find it. Kwame smiled at the brave young elephant. Very well. The four of us will leave at dawn. That evening, the entire herd gathered around the travelers to wish them luck. The mothers touched their babies' foreheads with their trunks, and the older elephants shared what little food they had found that day. Django approached her father one last time. Please be careful, and please come back to us. I will do everything in my power to return with good news, Kwame promised, wrapping his trunk gently around his daughter's neck. As the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon, Kwame led his small group away from the herd. They walked steadily northward, following the ancient migration routes that elephants had used for thousands of years. For the first 2 days, they traveled through familiar territory, but the landscape grew increasingly barren as they continued north. The grass became sparser, and the few trees they encountered were leafless and dying. On the morning of the second day, they came across a small family of meerkats who appeared to be lost and desperate. The tiny creatures were huddled together under a dying acacia tree, too weak to continue their own search for water. Please, squeaked the mother meerkat, have you seen any water? Our babies are dying. Kwame's heart was moved by the small creature's plight. Even though his own family was in danger, he could not ignore those who needed help. We are searching for water ourselves, he told them gently. But you may travel with us if you wish. Perhaps together we will find what we seek. The grateful meerkats climbed onto Kwame's broad back, and the group continued northward. The small animals proved to be excellent scouts with sharp eyes that could spot danger from far away. On the third day, they reached the red rocks that Kwame's grandfather had described. These massive stone formations rose from the earth like ancient monuments, their surfaces worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. The iron-rich soil gave the rocks their distinctive red color, making them look as though the earth itself was bleeding. Between the rocks, Kwame began searching for the first elephant footprint. What exactly are we looking for, grandfather? Asked Temba, who had been scanning the rocks carefully. According to the old stories, the ancient elephants carved the shape of their feet into the stones to mark the path, Kwame explained. The footprints should be deep enough to survive many seasons, but old enough that they might be covered by sand or hidden by plants. They searched for hours under the burning sun, examining every rock surface and clearing away sand and debris. The meerkats helped by exploring crevices too small for the elephants to reach. Just as they were beginning to lose hope, Kessie called out from behind a large boulder. I found something, she trumpeted excitedly. The others hurried to where she stood, and there, carved deep into the red stone, was the unmistakable shape of an elephant's foot. The carving was ancient and weathered, but still clearly visible. This is it, Kwame said with wonder in his voice. This is the beginning of the path our ancestors marked for us. They studied the footprint carefully and noticed that it seemed to point toward a gap between two tall rock formations. Following this direction, they soon found a second footprint carved into another stone, and then a third. As they followed the trail of ancient footprints, the landscape began to change. The red rocks gave way to rolling hills, covered with thorny bushes and scattered acacia trees. This was the Valley of Thorns that Kwame's grandfather had mentioned. The thorns were merciless, tearing at their thick skin as they pushed through the dense vegetation. Some of the thorny bushes grew as tall as small trees, their branches intertwined to create almost impenetrable barriers. Bomani, being the youngest, had the most difficulty navigating the thorny passages. "I can't get through here," he called out as he struggled with a particularly dense patch of thorns. "Watch how I do it," Kessie said patiently. She showed him how to use his trunk to push the branches aside and create a path, moving slowly and carefully to avoid the worst of the thorns. On their 4th day in the valley, they encountered their first serious danger. As they rested in the shade of a large rock formation, the meerkats suddenly became agitated, chattering frantically and pointing toward a ridge above them. "Danger!" squeaked the father meerkat. "Hyenas approach!" Kwame looked up and saw a pack of spotted hyenas moving along the ridge, their eyes fixed on the travelers below. The hyenas had been following them for some time, waiting for an opportunity to attack. "Stay close together," Kwame commanded. "Do not show fear." The hyenas descended from the ridge, circling the elephants and making threatening calls. Their leader, a large female with scarred flanks, approached boldly. Well, she laughed with the characteristic cackle of her kind. "What have we here? Lost elephants in our territory? You look tired and weak. Perhaps it's time for you to rest permanently." Kwame stepped forward, his massive bulk dwarfing the hyena. "We are passing through peacefully. We have no quarrel with you." "Ah, but we have a quarrel with you," the hyena leader replied. "This is our hunting ground, and you are trespassing. Pay the toll, and perhaps we will let you pass." "What toll?" Temba asked, his voice shaking slightly. "One of the young ones," the hyena said, her eyes gleaming with malice. "Leave us the smallest elephant, and the rest of you may continue your journey." Kwame's eyes flashed with anger. "Never. We protect our family, just as you protect yours." For a tense moment, the two sides faced each other. The hyenas outnumbered the elephants, but they were much smaller and weaker. The meerkats had hidden themselves in the crevices of the rocks, too frightened to move. Then Kwame had an idea. He remembered something his grandfather had once told him about the intelligence of hyenas and their respect for cleverness. "I propose a challenge," Kwame announced. "If you can solve a riddle, we will leave peacefully. If you cannot, you must let us pass without payment." The hyena leader considered this, her cunning mind working. "Wit riddle. I am carved in stone, but I move across the land. I am ancient, but I guide the young. I am one, but I am many. What am I?" The hyenas huddled together, discussing the riddle in their harsh voices. After several minutes, the leader approached with a confident grin. "The answer is water," she declared. "Water carves stone, moves across land, is ancient, and guides all living things." Kwame shook his great head slowly. "A good answer, but incorrect." The hyena's grin faded. "Then what is the answer?" Footprints, Kwame replied. The ancient footprints carved in stone that move with those who follow them. They are old, but guide the young. And though each print is one, together they form a path for many. The hyenas muttered among themselves, clearly impressed by the clever riddle. Their leader nodded reluctantly. You have earned passage, wise elephant, but beware. Greater dangers lie ahead in the singing sands. As the hyenas melted back into the thorny landscape, Temba looked at Kwame with admiration. How did you think of that riddle so quickly, grandfather? Sometimes wisdom comes not from knowing all the answers, but from understanding what questions to ask, Kwame replied. For 3 more days, they continued through the valley, following the ancient footprints from stone to stone. The journey was exhausting, and their hunger and thirst grew stronger each day. They found a few small pools of muddy water, but barely enough to wet their throats. On the 7th day of their journey, they climbed to the top of a steep hill and saw a sight that filled them with both awe and terror. Stretching out before them was a vast desert of sand dunes, with no sign of vegetation or water anywhere. This was the singing sands that the hyena had warned them about. Grandfather, Temba said quietly, "Are you sure we're going the right way? This doesn't look like a place where we would find a spring." Kwame stared at the endless sand dunes, feeling doubt creep into his mind for the first time. The desert seemed to stretch on forever, and the heat rising from the sand created shimmering mirages that danced and disappeared like ghosts. But then he remembered something else his grandfather had told him. Sometimes the greatest treasures are hidden in the most unlikely places. We continue, Kwame said with determination. The footprints haven't led us wrong yet. They descended into the desert, following the ancient trail across the shifting sands. The heat was overwhelming, and the sand burned their feet with each step. Soon they discovered why this place was called the Singing Sands. The wind created an eerie musical sound as it moved across the dunes, like the voices of ancient spirits calling to them. They traveled mostly at night, when the temperature was cooler, and rested during the day in whatever shade they could find. The meerkats proved invaluable as guides, using their natural ability to navigate by the stars. On the 2nd day in the desert, disaster struck. Bomani stepped into a hidden sand pit and twisted his leg badly. He collapsed with a cry of pain, unable to put any weight on the injured limb. "I can't go any further," he gasped. "Leave me here and continue. The family needs water more than they need me." "Absolutely not," Kwame said firmly. "We do not abandon family." Working together, they created a makeshift sling using tough grass fibers that Kessie had saved from the valley. With Bomani riding partially supported between Kwame and Temba, they continued their journey at a slower pace. On the 3rd day in the desert, they encountered an ancient tortoise who was sitting motionless on a large, flat rock. The old reptile's shell was scarred and weathered, suggesting he had lived in this harsh environment for many decades. "Travelers," the tortoise said in a voice like rustling leaves, "you seek the spring that never fails." "You know of it?" Kwame asked, surprised to find another living creature in this desolate place. "I am older than the rocks beneath your feet." the tortoise replied. "I have seen many seek the spring. Some find it, others do not. The difference is not in their strength or speed, but in their understanding of what they truly seek." "What do you mean?" Temba asked. "The spring provides more than water," the tortoise explained. "It offers wisdom, unity, and hope. Those who seek only water may find the spring, but miss its greatest gifts. Those who seek to save their families and preserve knowledge for future generations, they find everything." The tortoise's words gave Kwame new strength and clarity. They thanked the ancient creature and continued on their way. Just as the sun was setting on their 10th day of travel, they crested a large sand dune and saw something that made their hearts leap with joy. In the distance, beyond the edge of the desert, they could see green vegetation and what appeared to be palm trees. It was an oasis. "Water," whispered Kessie, hardly daring to believe her eyes. They hurried down the dune and across the remaining sand as fast as their tired legs could carry them. The meerkats chattered excitedly, sensing the end of their long journey. As they approached the oasis, they could hear the most beautiful sound in the world: the gentle bubbling of flowing water. There, in the center of the green oasis, was a crystal-clear spring that bubbled up from deep underground. The water was cool and fresh, surrounded by lush grass and fruit trees that had somehow survived the drought. The 4 elephants rushed into the water, drinking deeply and spraying the precious liquid over their hot, dusty bodies. The meerkats drank gratefully from a shallow pool near the spring's edge. They had never tasted anything so wonderful in their entire lives. "We found it," Temba said in amazement. "We actually found the spring of life." But Kwame was looking beyond the spring itself, studying the area around it. On the far side of the oasis, carved into a large stone near the water's edge, was not just one footprint, but an entire stone tablet covered with ancient elephant carvings. Kwame approached the stone and examined the symbols carefully. Slowly, he began to understand their meaning. The carvings showed elephants drinking from the spring, but they also told a much more complex story. There were drawings showing the changing seasons, the cycle of drought and rain, and most importantly, detailed maps showing multiple routes to the spring from different directions. "This stone tells the complete story," Kwame realized. "It shows that this spring has been here for countless generations, providing water for elephants during every great drought. But more than that, it shows that there are several paths to this place, marked by different sets of footprints." As they explored the oasis more thoroughly, they discovered that they were not alone. Other animals had also found their way to the spring: zebras, gazelles, and even a small family of lions who drank peacefully alongside the other creatures. The spring seemed to create a magical peace where natural enemies could coexist. They spent 3 days at the oasis, regaining their strength and studying the ancient stone tablet. Kwame taught the younger elephants how to read the symbols and memorize every detail of the journey back. The meerkat family decided to stay at the oasis, where they could build a new home near the permanent water source. "This knowledge must be passed on to future generations," Kwame told his companions. "Someday, Our grandchildren may need to make this same journey. On their fourth morning at the spring, they began the return journey. But this time, they took a different route, one shown on the ancient stone tablet that promised to be shorter and less dangerous. The new path avoided the worst of the desert and led through rocky canyons where occasional springs provided water along the way. The return trip took them 8 days, and they made several important discoveries. They found and marked new water sources that could serve as rest stops for future travelers. They also improved some of the ancient trail markers, clearing sand and debris from the old footprints and carving new ones where the old ones had become too worn to see clearly. When they finally appeared on the horizon near their home territory, the waiting herd rushed out to meet them. Even from a distance, the other elephants could see that the travelers looked healthier and stronger than when they had left. "Did you find water?" Django asked anxiously. "Yes," Kwame said simply. But his tired smile said everything. The entire herd trumpeted with joy, and the celebration continued long into the night. The next morning, Kwame led the entire family on the journey to the spring of life. The trek was challenging for the mothers with young calves, but Kwame had learned much from his first journey. They followed the shorter route he had discovered and took their time, resting frequently and helping the weakest members of the group. They also stopped at the new water sources that had been marked along the way. When they finally reached the oasis, the joy was overwhelming. The baby elephants played in the water while their mothers drank deeply. The older elephants rolled in the mud at the spring's edge, coating their skin with the protective clay. But Kwame made sure that the herd understood the importance of protecting this precious place. "We must never take more than we need," he warned them. "This spring must be preserved for future generations of elephants." Under Kwame's guidance, the herd established a permanent camp near the oasis. They found that the area provided not only water, but also sufficient vegetation to support them until the rains returned to their traditional territory. As the weeks passed, Kwame began teaching the younger elephants about the history of the spring of life and the importance of the ancient footprint trail. He made sure that several elephants memorized the route completely so that the knowledge would never be lost. He also taught them the meanings of the symbols on the stone tablet, including the maps showing alternative routes and the seasonal indicators that could help future travelers choose the best time to make the journey. One evening, as Kwame sat by the spring, watching his grandchildren play in the water, Django approached him. "Father," she said, "you saved our entire family. How can we ever thank you?" Kwame looked at his daughter with wise, gentle eyes. "You can thank me by remembering this story and passing it on to your children. The ancient elephants carved those footprints so that we would survive. Now it's our responsibility to ensure that future generations will also know the way." Temba, who had become like a son to Kwame during their journey, came to sit beside them. His injured leg had healed well during their time at the spring. "Grandfather, will you teach me to carve footprints? I want to mark some of the difficult passages we found so that other elephants won't get lost." Kwame smiled with pride. "Yes, my boy, that is exactly what we should do." Over the following months, as they waited for the rains to return to their homeland, Kwame and the younger elephants worked together to improve the ancient trail. They cleared thorny passages, marked dangerous areas, and carved new footprints where the old ones had become too worn to see clearly. When the rains finally came and the herd was able to return to their traditional territory, they carried with them not just the memory of their survival, but a deeper understanding of the wisdom and foresight of their ancestors. Years later, when other herds faced similar droughts, Kwame's family shared the knowledge of the spring of life, helping to save countless elephant lives. The ancient footprint trail continued to serve its purpose, guiding lost and desperate elephants to safety generation after generation. Word of the spring spread among the elephant communities across Africa. Herds would send their wisest members to learn the route from Kwame, creating a network of knowledge that ensured the survival of their species during times of crisis. And Kwame, now even older and more respected than before, often told young elephants the story of their great journey. He would end each telling with the same words his grandfather had spoken to him many years before. Remember, young ones, that the footprints we follow today were carved by elephants who faced the same dangers we face. And the footprints we carve today will guide elephants who are not yet born. We are all connected across time by our shared wisdom and our love for family. As the sun set over the savannah, painting the sky in brilliant colors, Kwame knew that the ancient tradition would continue. The footprints to the spring would always be there for those who needed them most. A testament to the power of memory, courage, and the unbreakable bonds of family. When Kwame finally passed away years later, peacefully in his sleep beside the very spring he had found, the other elephants carved his own footprint into the stone tablet as a tribute to his wisdom and bravery. Future generations would know that this was the print of the elephant who had rediscovered the ancient path and ensured that the knowledge lived on. The story of Kwame and the spring of life became legend among the elephants, told and retold around waterholes and under starlit skies. And in every telling, the message remained the same, that wisdom, courage, and love can overcome even the greatest challenges, and that the footprints we leave behind can light the way for others to follow.